Hey everyone, back to ramble again. Earlier this week, I remember saying that I was burned out on politics, and let me just qualify that by saying that I'm burned out on me personally partaking in the mess of politics. In that I am not a delegate this year, and I do plan on trying to right my life and steer it towards being a delegate maybe in 2018 and 2020. But this year I just have too much going on in my life. But I still have opinions. I still see things from a unique perspective as being somebody who has been very involved in politics before. And so one of the strange ironies that it boggles my mind how this has come about, but I know how it came about, is that the Republican Party has their Republican National Convention where they have what looks like democracy, and the Democratic Party have their Democratic National Convention with what looks like a republic, or at least a half republic, right? Something like the United States would be, right? So why do the Democrats, who name themselves after democracy, have less democracy in their delegate voting system? The system that brings forth their nominee for the presidential election. Why do they have less than the Republicans on the whole democracy factor? And if you don't know what I'm talking about, here, I'm going to go over to the CNN Politics Election Center, right? So many of you have been here, it's easy to find. And when you go down here, you see that all of the Republican delegates, they have pledged and unpledged delegates, right? And you don't see any unpledged delegates added to any totals at all, right? Over here on the Democratic side, we see pledged and super, right? And then pledged and super. And see, my nightmare scenario here would be if Bernie Sanders right here got more regular pledged voters than Hillary Clinton gets pledged voters. Now, the totals are going to determine who the nominee is, but the pledged voter totals are going to determine whether or not we have a fucking riot in our country, okay? Now, let me explain why this concerns me. In 2012, when I was part of a cabal who were trying to vote for whoever was second place in the RNC race, I was there as a spoiler, but I made a lot of friends who were supporters of Ron Paul, and I ended up pledging for Ron Paul because he was second place. I didn't want Rick Perry, Rick Santorum, or Michelle Bachmann to win. Those were my three absolute will not ever vote for people, even as a spoiler. I just wanted them out of that race. And to me, if those three people got eliminated, I would feel like I had done something. At least the worst of the possible of two evils would be eliminated before we even get down to holding our nose and voting for the worst of two evils, right? Or the best of the two evils. Whatever. I was just trying to eliminate the worst of the worst. And as a Ron Paul delegate, I saw a lot of chicanery that went on. Some of that is actually on my channel because I filmed every convention that I went to, every state, congressional, judicial, and county convention that I was a delegate for. They're all on this channel. And what happened to Ron Paul in 2012, basically the RNC rewrote the rules, the bylaws for the convention such that even though Ron Paul had the 5 states that he needed to, speak on the floor and, force a vote to happen right then, he had 8 states, in fact. They rewrote the rules and they made sure that he did not get to speak on the floor. They just changed the rules to make sure that they could crown Romney as their nominee without any subversion by all of those Paul bots who were actually, if you look at it politically, they were libertarians who were trying to take over the Republican Party. So, like, Ron Paul had run for the Libertarian Party before. So now we've got Bernie Sanders in 2016. And he was an independent for a very long time, and now he's the outsider trying to take over the Democratic Party. And a lot of those people who were Paul bots before are now Bernie bots. Okay? They got burned in 2012. Forgive the slip of the tongue there. That burned. They got burned in 2012 by the way that Ron Paul just got screwed. And there are many videos here on YouTube that can explain how he got screwed. He probably wasn't going to win. He didn't have near the chances of Bernie Sanders right now. But those people who were supporting him, who were trying to force that brokered convention, who wanted to see that third vote happen, as per the bylaws, as they were before the race started, those people were totally disenfranchised. They had gone through a whole year of going to all these conventions and pushing for their candidate, only to see the rules changed right at the end just to screw them out of even having that one moment where they get to see Ron Paul speak at the RNC. So, coming into 2016, knowing that some of those Paul bots were never going to participate in the Republican Party ever again, they're now probably supporting the independent candidate who's trying to take over the Democratic Party, because they're all about outsiders. They're all about not voting with the establishment. They want to. They basically see Republicans and Democrats as the same thing. Okay. 2 sides of the same coin, and they want to see somebody with really different platform make it. So the Democratic Party has this system in place with superdelegates, right? There's like 700 plus superdelegates that are out there. Hillary Clinton has 483 as per CNN's delegate estimate, but they don't actually get to vote until the DNC. But it is telling that she probably is going to get this nomination as things are going right now. And part of that is that Bernie Sanders can win every state until the DNC. All right, he can win every state, but they're not winner-take-all states. So he doesn't just have to win them. He has to win them and get the delegates. Okay? And get like a majority of the delegates, like 75% of them, in order to cinch this for himself. Whereas she only has to get 35% of the delegates in order to keep him from getting the nomination. Now, I had previously thought of a nightmare scenario where Bernie Sanders could end up with more pledged delegates than Hillary Clinton, and then the superdelegates going Hillary Clinton's way would put her over the top. If that were to happen, there's going to be riots everywhere. Right now, there is a MoveOn.org petition with like 200,000 plus fucking signatures on it that is saying, please, superdelegates, please, DNC, please do not disregard the will of the people, right? Because they're treating this as a democracy instead of a political party. a club that helps get you elected, right? These political parties can change the rules at any time. They can pull a lot of shady shit, okay? And so it looks like, because the Democratic Party has superdelegates, that they actually have something more akin to a republic when they're choosing their nominee, because they have these people who are chosen to just represent the party without having been voted in as a delegate, without having represented a precinct in their state at all, right? Well, they aren't the only ones that have a method for protecting their establishment candidate. And the reason why the Democratic Party has this in place is because when I was born, there was a president who was a gaffe machine, who seemed like he had his head in the clouds with a whole bunch of really technical notions about the world, and he really didn't connect with the people. His name was Jimmy Carter, right? And most Democrats did not think that Jimmy Carter was going to win re-election at the time, and rightly so, because he didn't. And so there was an upsurgence against him within the party, and the Bernie Sanders of the time back then was Ted Kennedy, okay, famous from the Kennedy family, senator from Massachusetts. And in order to protect the nomination to the election for the incumbent president, which that's a really important, it's an important high ground as far as elections go. Incumbents have won more often than challengers, and it's every 8 years, or every time that somebody is the incumbent runs out of their available years as president. That's when it's really up for grabs. It's really hard to change the winds of change, to bring that forth if you have an incumbent that is running. So, and that's true in every office. But in order to shut Ted Kennedy down and keep him from becoming president by way of becoming the nominee for the general election over the incumbent president from the same political party, the DNC created a rule and started nominating superdelegates. And these superdelegates were people who had proven their worth to the DNC. So that's where we have that in place. Now, it turned out that Jimmy Carter still lost, even though he had all of these shady things in his favor in order to get the nomination and still be able to run as the incumbent with that high ground. Now we have, in 1980, Jimmy Carter lost to Ronald Reagan, who at the time used the same methods that Ron Paul tried to use in order to secure his nomination. Ronald Reagan had to force a brokered convention for his first term. He ended up being a buzzword and like a very popular name on both sides of the aisle, but when he first started out, people didn't believe in him, and it took a brokered convention to get him to be the Republican Party's nominee. Now, after 2012, the way that Ronald Reagan became president is not available to any upstart who's going to try to come from behind as a dark horse and take over the Republican Party. No, they have protected their establishment candidate by making the minority candidate, the person who gets less states, have to work even harder in order to become their nominee, or at least force a brokered convention by saying, hey, I'm actually a viable candidate too. If there is no other viable candidate but the one that got the most states, then he becomes the nominee. And it was 5 states that you needed. Now it's more. So even then, without having any super delegates on the Republican Party, it looks like they have a process that looks more like democracy than the Democratic Party's method of appointing super delegates who get to vote without being voted into their position. But here's the thing. In the Republican Party, in practice, there was actually a different method of protecting the establishment candidate that it makes up for the lack of superdelegates. And here's how it goes. In order to be sent to the Republican National Convention as a delegate that votes there, you must go to your state convention or your congressional convention as a delegate and get voted in as a delegate that's going to the RNC. There are only a couple slots for every congressional district, and only a couple slots after that are saved for the state as a whole. Now, let's say you were supporting, say, Ron Paul or Rick Santorum in the 2012 election. When you got to those conventions, you might have been thinking, hey, everyone gets a chance to make a speech and say, hey, vote for me, please, because I'm all about my candidate. And so you can collect people to vote for you by giving this impassioned speech. But the speech is just a formality, because when you get there, the candidate that you have selected to pledge for and try to make it to the RNC for, he's got a table. And at that table, he's going to give you what's called a slate. A slate is a piece of paper that says who you should vote for. And who's normally on that slate? Well, already existing political officials who have seats. People who say they're a mayor or a state senator or a state congressman, and they went to their precinct and they were voted in as a regular delegate, and then they pledged for their candidate who's normally the establishment candidate, but it can be a different candidate. And what's even shadier than that, listen here, you can find people who already have office in the Republican Party, like as a state senator or a congressman, and they will be on the slates of opposing political candidates. Say Ron Paul you'll read the third name will be, hey, that's my district's congressman, and then you look at Romney and you'll say, hey, the first name on there, there he is again. And then you'll look at Ron Paul and he's like the 10th name, and it's like, well, who is this person going to vote for if he goes to the RNC? One of the ways that this really protects the establishment candidate is that if that establishment candidate can raise enough money in order to pay the campaign debts off of one of his rivals, he will offer that guy a buyout. And he'll say, look, you are like $2 million in the hole, Newt Gingrich. I'm Mitt Romney, and I want all of your delegates. As long as you endorse me, I will then take $2 million out of my $200 million that I've raised, and I will pay off all of your campaign debts as long as you get out right now. And before you do, I would like you to rewrite all the slates that you have for the states that are coming up before you make your announcement. And I want you to put forth all of my delegates as selections for your slates. So even though the Republican Party has something that looks a little bit more like democracy when you're just looking at the CNN website, and you're like, why don't they have superdelegates? They still have a way of making sure that only the established people who they know have the party's interests at heart, who have been working with the party for years, who maybe even have they're holding office right now. Those are the only people who are going to make it to the Republican National Convention to be able to vote. Regular Joe Schmoes who just know how to make a speech, they're not going to get many votes. I think I got 7, and I made a good speech for me. I tried, but those 7 of them, 4 of them I knew. Those were just guys that I made it to that convention with, and 3 of them just liked my speech. But you need like 100 to get sent on. So, yeah, it didn't happen for me. And it will never, because you really have to be known within the party to be put on a slate. And the only way to get these votes from your other delegates, really to get over the top where you can beat out everyone else, is to be on someone's slate. Because nobody cares what grand speech that you make. The only thing that they care about is, are you on a slate? And those slates aren't just the candidates. There is a gun lobby slate. You go over, you'll see, in my state, it's Rocky Mountain gun owners, and they will have their own slate of people who will only vote for candidates that are in favor of more guns, more guns, more guns. And there are other things like the pro-life lobby that will have their own slate. This is the pro-life people who we've vetted. And you can try as just Joe Schmo to try to get on their slates. But they are very picky, and they know who they want to go. And so you see a homogeny of people who have already been to the Republican National Convention ending up going again and again and again, because they're very wary of the outsider. And now we've got 2 outsiders, as of this video right now, Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, who could win in both of these political parties, who are clubs of people that try to stick together for years and years to try to maintain their positions. And they're being overrun by outsiders. And so what are they going to do? They're going to pull out all the stops. And in Sanders' case, what happens to keep him from getting the nomination will be reflected in the amount of riots that we have across the country, and in the amount of non-participation in the general election. Same thing that happened with Ron Paul. Same thing that probably happened with Ted Cruz, but I wasn't quite conscious of the political arena back then, so I can't really speak on that. That's the end of this rant. I'm going to come out with a slew of videos in the coming week that will probably be not what you'd expect, but they will still be about politics, and they will be about how people don't even see some of the corruption and just the cronyism that goes on, and it's rampant, and it does not get any sort of news or attention at all. And that's actually the part that interests me, that keeps me going, watching all this politics, because there's so much corruption and stuff going on. But the way that you actually have to participate is the part that's keeping me from participating this year, because I got too much going on in my life. All I can do is make some videos, and hopefully some of you that are participating will learn something.